Okay, great. So, hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Entering the Creative Unknown Conversations on Artistic Process. And today I am so grateful to be joined by my friend Sophie Dufresne. And I'm just going to read her artist statement before we begin and get into it. So, Sophie is a figurative painter and illustrator working in gouache, acrylics, and digital technique. Her work examines the relationship between nature and culture within the inner world through dreamlike images featuring landscapes, houses, human or animal figures. Drawn to the unseen world from a young age, she's inspired by the magical dimension of reality that strives to make it visible using vibrant colors and simple narrative compositions. Exploring themes of wholeness and individuation, her work speaks to the inner child and invites viewers to consciously reconnect with the magic of nature. Sophie creates illustrated decks, greeting cards, and accessories under the name of Sophie Key, which Sophie and Key put together and means who in French, asking, "Who are you?" for those looking to live a more authentic life. So, Sophie, I'm so happy that you're here with me, and I am looking to live a more authentic life. So, this is the perfect conversation for me.
Thank
So,
you for having me.
yeah, thank you so much for being here. And I am so, we all kind of dive into different areas of creativity, or those of us who are creatives. And sometimes we just like really go into certain aspects. And then there's certain aspects that we kind of feel shy and don't really want to touch. And for me, the making of oracle cards is one of those things. I'm so fascinated by the process of making oracle cards. So I'm really excited about this conversation today. And something struck me in your artist statement that I wanted to visit. I wanted to talk about your childhood connection to creativity and sort of being in a magical space as a child. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, I was raised in a very creative family. My mom was an artist, so we drew up drawings, and I still have, a booklet of the drawings that I made when I was 3 or 4 years old. Um, Also ceramics. So there was always something to do around the house. And then this was a time that we were pretty free to go around, so we would go on walks in nature. We'd spend all of our weekends in countryside. So nature was very much a part of my childhood, and sort of the magic aspect of that is, um, I don't know, the unseen. I really enjoyed, we had all of the fairy tale books from around the world, and I was very fascinated by that. And all their, like, the different stories around the world kind of um, were similar. Not a lot of the times they would repeat, and yeah, so that's that's a tough
That
question.
was it. That was your experience. And the reason why I asked that is I'm kind of curious about, I feel like creativity, especially when, well, this isn't always true, but lots of us are creative when we have the freedom in our youth to be creative. We're not really thinking about how to have a career or how to build a family or whatever it is we're trying to do that represents, I'm going to call adulthood. So I wanted to ask if you found yourself, if there was a point in your life where you sort of stepped away a bit from your creative life, and if so, what brought you back in?
Oh, for sure. I definitely stepped away from it. Um, well, I made the decision to go into engineering. So it was very technical field. I enjoyed art. But that was like the unseen for me, but the mathematics, that was something that was intriguing to me. So I did spend most of my career, doing that, mathematics, and then learning how to code. And I always did, though, little projects, but they were just, little crafts projects. And I always felt that I was creative, but, in just making gifts for people, or, it was mostly personal. And what brought me back, I think I was really yearning for my whole life. I knew that I made that choice to go in the math, but I always in the back of my mind I wanted to get back to art. And I think when I moved to Los Angeles, there was definitely a shift there. I left my PhD in mathematics, and what am I going to do now here? And the city is so bursting with creativity. It was definitely stimulating that way, and new possibilities. It felt like possible, but I was really so far away from that that I'd seen this little book called I think What Color is Your Parachute? And it was like you can't, make a really drastic shift from one career to another, but you can do make some kind of transitional shift. So that's kind of what I ended up doing is, I was in engineering mathematics, and how do you do that to becoming an artist? And the transitional field was like, well, I have skills in programming. And the internet was opening up. So I used my programming skill and worked in the internet, but I always focused on the design aspect. So I hung out with graphic designers. I asked a lot of questions to learn. I learned to do animation. So I try to get in that way more and more. And then more and more, ask to do design as my job. And that's kind of how I open it up to getting experience more in a visual field. And then so when the transition came, I was already a little bit, professionally um, introduced to that.
So when you start to dip your toe back into a creative process, and I guess you were already doing this where you were making like little things, maybe for somebody or a card, but in order to feed the creative fire, it does need to become more personal or more inquisitive,
Hmm.
more connected to something deep. So, were you already sort of doing that when you were, I don't even want to call it crafting because your work is definitely not crafting, but when you were sort of just playing around without a goal, when did you notice the shift? Because you speak about individuation and
Hmm.
dreams. So, was that always sort of a part of your process, the dreams, or how did that transition?
No. Yeah, it was a definite shift. I think because all those years I was mainly doing things from the outside. It was just observing, and it was very much external. And what happened is, I mean, I think there was this sort of, I was approaching midlife, so there's that dissatisfaction that, like, this it, there's
Yes,
more.
is that
And
all there is?
yeah, and I think I would take a lot of walks in my neighborhood, and on one of my walks, I just happened to notice a tree house. And that was a shift for me. It was like, oh, it reminded me that when we were kids, me, my twin sister, and my younger brother, we were always, trying to make this tree house. And I don't know, there was this spark that I was like, oh, maybe I was looking to do a series of something I wanted to do. I just thought, artists, they always do series of work. They have that to me felt like this is the thing that I should challenge myself to do. And so I thought, well, I'm going to do a series of tree houses. And I was looking on Flickr, that dates like how long ago that was.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I found these beautiful, very quirky tea houses, not tree house, but tea houses by this Japanese architect, um, Fujimori, Terunobu, Terunobu Fujimori, I think his name is. Um,
There
Yes,
he is.
there he is. And they were just so whimsical. So I started just by making collage of the actual house, but giving it a little bit more of a personal touch.
Hmm.
And that was the start actually of like the personal search. Like he says, it's like that personal architecture, and it's that idea that bringing together the built world, the mind, the human world with nature. And that was my first kind of like aha moment. Like this is where like I wanted to get back to nature, and where I lived, I installed a little bird feeder, a little hummingbird feeder, so that you can see that in the next
Yeah, let me go to the
slide.
next slide. What I'm
Oh yeah.
loving about this is that, oh yeah,
Yeah, there's my little hummingbird feeder. But I'll get back to that. I have another thing to say about this.
okay.
Yeah,
I hear.
so this is the like the first, okay, I'll explain this a little bit, but I mean, I could spend too much time here, so I'll try to be quick. But essentially, that was like my discovery of the other side. I was attracted to the unseen, but I didn't know. It was just more like, to me, it was more magical before. And then this is the moment I discovered that it was real, that it actually exists, that, if you put yourself in a mood and ask some question, like you'll get some answers. You can get the other side to talk to you. And I it was a conversation that somebody, they were not from here. They were didn't know what they would do. I would ask them like, what would you do if you were not born here? You could do whatever you wanted, and that was not even something that person could even think about. So at that moment, I just thought I'm going to try to guess it. And I just calmed down and I asked the question. I saw this picture of this woman there. That's from a movie, a French movie. And I mean, curiously, it is the shadow, but I didn't connect that then. It
Hmm.
was just more like I was like, oh, florist, because that's, in the movie, that character was a florist. I said, oh, you'd be a florist. And turns out she did gardening, in her spare time. So that was pretty exciting. And I told a friend at work, and she says, well, do me, do me. And I'm like, I don't know how this works. Like, does it work if I don't know the person I don't know? So um, she says, well, just, think about it and text me later if you get something. And that night, I just really wanted to get started on my treehouse project. And there was just not enough time. So somehow the idea sparked that I would draw my friend as if she was the treehouse. And so that's that drawing that you see there on the right. I just started, and very much inspired by those tea houses. I just started with the roof coming down. And when I came down to the leg, I thought, well, oh, if if that tea house is my friend, then definitely it has to have wheels because she's always kind of on the move. There is something about that energy, that the movement that I wanted to that this drawing had to say about. And then she has this dog that she would just take the dog everywhere. And the dog is like a really important part of her life. So I just thought dog has to go there. And since I already drew the house, I just tagged it along on the side. I just added the trees and I was like, it's just a quick drawing, but it was really significant.
Yeah. And what I'm loving about just seeing this, and we could spend 2 hours just talking about houses or more, 2 weeks maybe
Right.
talking about 2 years. But the wonderful thing that I'm loving about just I'm noticing the response in my own body when I'm looking at the tree houses from the first slide that I feel like there is something about the lifted house. It's up
Mhm.
high. It can avoid, I'm just going through my associations. It's prepared for a storm, a flood, right? It's up above. It can see
Right.
everything. It is, I don't know, there's just like you can just have a million different associations with houses just based on practicalities, not even going into the whole symbolic meaning behind houses and what they represent. So what I'm really interested in here is that you're speaking when you're talking about this experience with the florist, you are already starting to like embrace the idea of being an oracle, really, kind of.
Oh, yeah, I guess. But yeah, I didn't do this thinking of making an oracle. That came years later.
Yeah, I know, but I know hindsight's 2020.
Yeah. I mean, but it's true that when I did mathematics, before that were my projects were they were Oracle. I mean, they were predictive models. I was building
Yeah.
predictive models. So I think that has always been sort of part of, I don't know, my search to figure things out. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move forward. Okay.
Yeah, this one, this is yeah, so what I wanted to say about this one is like this is my process of active imagination, which I didn't know what that was called at all. But I don't know if you recall, there was this video that came out about, 12, 13 years ago, um, by Jill Bolte Taylor. She was talking about that she had a stroke on the left side of her brain, and she described her whole experience in a TED Talk. And it was really impressive. She was talking about how that morning when she got the stroke, she goes in the bathroom and she felt like the molecule of her arms were blending with the molecule of the walls. I mean, there was no boundaries anymore between her bodies and the environment. And I thought that's pretty neat. And she finished the talk. She was, very, very inspiring. Like, what if you stepped under the right side of your your right hemisphere, this is the side where you're like one with everything. I don't know, it was just very spiritual. And I thought, what if I do an experiment? And I just sat on that chair and I would imagine my molecules blending with the tree and with the fountain. And I would tell myself I'm one with the fountain and one with the tree. And then I would ask the question, who is, like, what should I know about this person? And then I would just get an image and I would use that image as not to draw it literally, but just as a filter. So that I would kind of look at that person's life and just kind of pull out things that I knew that would relate to whatever message that I got. So it just helped me to narrow down into a specific thing. And so, like, if it was a second person was like a hawk. She had photographed a hawk, and that the hawk is what I pictured in my mind. And so I thought, okay, it's all about vision. So then I picked everything to do with vision, or just put elements of her life. But it turns out that, like my first friend, she has pets, so I put the cat and the dog in there, and I put the hawk. And then little by little, I started to realize that the animals were important. So it became not so much about the houses, though the house were mostly always there. But the animals became important.
Okay.
And so this one here, that's the house. You see, it's just I had gone to a little workshop at the local museum to do printmaking, and that was my attempt to carve it and even carve the text. But I wanted to give it a name, and so I searched for hawk, and I learned that the hawks were messengers, and I didn't really know, about symbolism very much. And all I knew about symbols for me were always been symbols were mathematics, and I didn't
Yeah.
know that things could be symbols. And it opened up a whole new world for me where I just think about making a drawing almost like making an equation. It's almost like building a little mathematical model where I pick all the elements and I put them together, not statically like I would do in equations, but it's really how I think of it in my mind. So I researched all of the different symbols. So that was my opening to that. But it just little by little, I added up, sorry. I was discovering new elements. It's kind of interesting that my voice break and this one is the messenger and it's about talking.
Yeah. You know what? This is really giving me, as you were speaking, I was thinking about like, I mean, I'm terrible at math. Maybe I'm not. I'm saying that I'm terrible at math because I always gave up on math. Um, but just hearing you speak, and we were having a conversation the other day where I think I said to you, one of my friends was talking about mathematics as being a feminine language.
Hmm.
And as you were speaking, I was just thinking like, I wonder if like I just opened my mind up to math now. If I would be, maybe I'm going to do an experiment.
Okay.
Maybe I'm the next Albert Einstein. Who knows? Okay. Okay, let's go through this process. I'm really interested in this.
Yeah, this one is so, I was just discovering one thing after another. And I would tell people about, what was doing because I was excited about it. And then they would say, oh, why don't you read this book and that? So somebody told me to read this book, No Boundary by Ken Wilber. And in there, I found this little table and I'd never heard of the shadow. That was my first time I was reading anything about Jung. And so I he was just talking about how everything is we make boundaries between things, we create that so that we break everything in two. And when you go to the therapist, it will always challenge you on your opposite. And so when I saw this little table, I thought, this is really cool. I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna draw. So the process became, I have this first drawing that I'm getting through this sort of imagination process. And then the second drawing I'm doing logically, I was like, I'm gonna reverse everything to get the opposite drawing because I
Mm,
don't know what it is. So, but I just work really very logically. I would just take every kind of, symbol. Like you see, you've got one is a cypress tree, and I thought, well, the other side, I just kind of thought, well, if it's the line, I picked a baobab tree. It's not an exact science, but
right.
in my mind, it had to be something just kind of an opposite meaning. It's I would kind of something was up, I would bring it down. If something was hidden, I would bring it out. It was sort of the process.
Have you ever done this process doing dominant and non-dominant hand with the same type of, that would be maybe interesting to do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think I've may have done one time, but not really thinking about the opposite, just like
Yeah,
what would happen if you drew the opposite hand.
right. Thank you for this book. I'm definitely going to look into that. Okay.
And this is sort of just showing that how I would make the opposite. This is actually interesting because that drawing is about the opposite. So the one on the left, actually, those are my little hummingbirds. I was inspired by my little hummingbirds. And this was my own. After I did two or three, a friend of mine said, why don't you just do yours? And I was like, yeah, you're right. I should do mine, right? So, so I picked the hummingbird as my animal and and then not even thinking when I showed it to my sister, she's like, well, my twin sister, she's like, well, that's you and me. That's the ocean in between because she lives in Europe. Um, so anyway, so that, and then it took a little while, but I found the opposite. When I found the opposite, it's just,
How do you know when you've found the opposite? Like, what's that process of things that it's hard to, there's not like an obvious opposite. What's that process like?
yeah, you can see behind that there's a lot of sketches. Like it's not, I don't find it right away, even though it looks very clean there. Um, yeah, how do I know? I think I had this kind of idea that it's almost like the yin yang sign. There has to be a little bit of each other on each one, so that if one is like kind of like separated, there's got to be a bit of separation on the other side, and likewise, there's a connection on the other side. So then I know that it's there, but I don't look for that. I don't look for that intentionally. It has to come out sort of without me even noticing. And then when
Yeah,
I notice it, like, okay, I think it's done.
it's interesting because you can, when you allow yourself to feel it, you can feel the opposites. Just it is a very intuitive thing that's happening, even just looking at it. And I love these two trees, like kind of holding hands.
Yeah, and they make the house.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
This is sort of like how little I knew about, making anything in color. So because I would just draw with pen and ink. And this is just my process learning, like, how do I put colors on these things? So I just wanted to just show like it's not necessarily, if somebody else is like starting from scratch, like I was, like to know that it's a process and you can just experiment and try different things.
Do you have a specific formula on writing or image first?
Um, I think I would do, so I mean, besides these, I would start out more like with a blank sheet and I would do both write and little sketches together and I would switch. There's always a process of switching for me between the words and the image. And because it's very much like a left brain, right brain process. So I try to use both sides and not just only visual or only words, but really try to mix the two.
Okay. Let's see. Okay,
Um,
so we're bringing in more animals now, or animals feel like the more predominant thing here.
yeah, yeah. In some of them, as I went, I just realized that the house wasn't, there was not always, I just go by my taste, but visually it was like this there's no room there. So the house, that it's more like a man-made element here. It's just the fence is the man-made element, and it means it's like escaping the domestic sort of arena. She's escaping the farm, going to the nature side, and then finding that is not, I mean, it can be dangerous. So that is sort of the warning of this story. So she's actually not really there in this drawing, but in the actual story, the wolf eats her, but not in this story. She kind of sits there on a tree and she's like, what do I do? And the moon there is like I had heard this song, the Pink Moon by Nick
Yeah,
Drake. You know
yeah,
this song?
yeah.
I just happened to watch a movie and the song played, and I thought around the time that I was thinking about this drawing, and so I decided to put the pink moon in there, and just I didn't know where to put it, and it ended up behind the ghost, head. So it looks like a halo, but my intention was the moon, but it works out because I think it says something else that the original story was not saying.
Yeah.
Because it has to be a tree, because of my series always have trees, where do I put the goat? And I saw this picture of a goat. In Morocco, the goats climb the trees to eat the olives, and I thought that was looked really funny. So that's why I put it there.
Aren't they incredible creatures? That's amazing.
Yeah, they're really
And it's sort
funny.
of like they're on even playing fields here, really.
The two of them, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. It's it just says something. I wanted to tell the whole fairy tale, but in one image. And I think
Yeah,
that is the moment that tells the whole story. It's like the
yeah,
meeting of those two forces.
I love it.
This is sort of after I've done, so, we're talking, this is not a matter of week, this is a matter of years. So this is maybe 5 or 6 years after I've gone all the sketches, I've gone through them twice, first just simple sketches and then more color. And then I was just frustrated. Like, what do I do with those? And I just, this is where I got the idea for the Oracle is I just saw somebody she was redoing the tarot, and I thought, why don't I have my own tarot, why don't I just do it? And I didn't quite sure how I was going to do it, but I wanted to have a full background. And so to test it out, so okay, I'm going to do those shapes. And because I don't know the colors I want originally, I decided I'm just going to always paint them black. I paint them with just a thick black watercolor, and to have some of a more spontaneous feel. So I have the sketch. I already know, what the composition is, but what I do is I would look for the animal picture on my computer screen and look at the photo and just do the paint without any sketching before, just spontaneously, so that it has that sort of spontaneous feel. And then after that, I really though adjust and design and I scan the black shapes in the computer and then I put in the color. And then thankfully the iPads and the pencil, Apple Pencil and the iPad Pro came around, a little before that. So I had a lot more tools to work with, but I could use digital brushes and go over, and I apply the colors in the computer.
It's really amazing when you are using, I mean, I never did anything digitally like that. And then, for certain things, I've just recently started doing that. And even though I love paper and paint like the most, I just like how that feels, in the hand. But when it comes to actually producing work that you're trying to do something like, for me, like animating certain things, or it really is so helpful in so many ways because you can only redo things so many times or like, trying to match a color. It's at least for me, it's something that I try to not use that often. But man, when I do use it, it is. So helpful.
Yeah, it's because you can move things. There are advantages to both sides, so that's why I
Yeah.
like to use both processes. Because when you put it on a computer, sometimes you'll get some accidents that you're like you would have never found out if you'd use only.
Right. You blow it up, you can see what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah, but they, as I move things around, and it's just like, oh, okay. So I'm always kind of on the lookout for something to happen that I think is cool.
So you're starting to go through, I'm going to scan through to the next slide, but you're starting to talk about, you're naming your cards.
Hmm.
And can you talk about that process? And here we are with the mediator. How are you doing this?
Well, yeah, and let me tell you, I'm just like now renaming them all, so don't get attached to those names. Um, yeah, that is the whole work for me. I mean, that is the individuation process. That is the introversion. Because making the drawing is one thing, and then it's like years and years and years of going back there and looking at the symbolism, and then I look at the image and I'm like, what is it telling me? And it's both personal and at the same time I look for, impersonal. I look for collective stories. I look for things to connect to things that are bigger than my own story. So that way it's just sort of this is how you integrate things, how you realize that maybe what you go through is not only personal, but there are some archetypal aspects to that as well. So how do I do this? I use the little apps on my dictionary apps on my phone, and I go and I read through it. I look at synonyms and I go through, and when I find that it's really funny because words are you can it's like words are not necessarily uh you can make words say anything. Like I start with one word and then I go through the synonyms and I'll end up with a word that means pretty much similar thing that I started with. So even though it's opposite, it's I can go, I can move from one thing to its opposite through the chains of words. But the image is always what keeps me honest. So that to me, like the fact that I have an image, it's like that's what pins it down, gives
Yeah.
a meaning because as von Franz would say, like in the unconscious, all the archetypes really emerge with one another. She made
Yeah.
this really cool demonstration, like everything is the tree or everything is the sun, depending on what you're focusing on. So the image is very important to have, just so that I can look at the word and look at the image like it doesn't match, right? It doesn't fit. But a lot of people work with archetype without images, and I find that even though what can be said is it can be very, very interesting, but at the same time, I find that there's not enough limit. There needs something that to pin it down somehow.
Yeah, and how do you live with your work? So are you like for me when I'm working, I have, you can't see it where you are, but I have this big string where I like kind of hang my dream images and I'm sort of like they're there and I'm engaging with them and I'm conversing with them. How do you live with your work as it's coming into fruition and you're building relationship?
Right now, I always had them either printed or stuff, but now I actually use them a lot on my phone because with Notion, the Notion app. So I use Notion to keep notes. So I've sort of trying to organize a little bit more, but I have so much stuff written everywhere. Like whenever I think of something that relates to this drawing, I, put it there so that I have it all in one place. So this is kind of how I go back and name things and rename, rename, rename. And then just the notes just keep growing.
Yeah.
Just keep growing. Um,
I
yeah.
like that you have like I love the way your brain works and just the fact that you said at the beginning of this at the beginning of our conversation how you approached going into work as creating a series. which all right there, it's already setting up an organizational system. Like you're coming up with a system, and I'm so the opposite of that. Like I could not be further from that. So I just find this so I'm trying to like take in what you're saying and not have my own stress about it because I'm so disorganized.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, it was both. I definitely had a framework and, very specific also because I'm an engineer. So I just thought, okay, this is my framework. It's going to have a tree, it's going to have an animal, it's going to have a house. And I had this whole thing. And even when I came up with the names at first, I had this very strict rule that it have to end with ER, you know, just so that I wouldn't like grab for the obvious thing right away. That at some point I was driving me nuts with it. So I decided
Yeah.
to ditch that. And now I'm like, it's like, oh, it has to come for the verb, not necessarily. I don't know. I'm more and more like thinking that, the rules sometimes are just too stifling and
Yeah, that's true. But I'm feeling like I feel like you and I are kind of opposite tarot cards because I feel like I want to start moving to the direct. Do you know what I mean? I want to start moving. We'll spiral together on a circle. Do you want to speak
yeah.
about this? Speaking of circles, let's talk about this
Yeah,
slide.
this one is basically this is the Zodiac project, and I just wanted to show that for my concept, and that's something I wasn't planning at the beginning, but I was just going to draw zodiac signs, and but when I was looking at these maps, I just thought about the hero's journey, and I wondered what could they actually correspond, and so that became my concept, like how. And it was not instant, because there's actually two. There's the hero's journey that's been popularized by Christopher Vogler that is for film, and as he made 12 stages, but Campbell's original journey has 17 stages. And so I looked at his and to try to make it work with the zodiac, his didn't quite work because it skipped. I knew I wanted Scorpio to match with the death and rebirth. And so between that and I think Leo is like the road of trials, or there were two steps, and with um, the one from Vogler, there's only one step. So I just kind of redid my own. I kind of did my own kind of correspondence, broke it down in 12 step, but they were a little different. I wanted to retain a bit more of the original idea from Campbell.
Okay. Oops.
This is my visual sort of, just to show the visual inspiration. I saw these in Wikipedia and I really liked the fact that they were not drawn in the sky, they were drawn there on Earth, in the natural setting. So I decided I'm going to do that. But what I wanted to do, so here they all look like they're in the same, around the same kind of castle. I wanted mine to reflect, I wanted the landscape to be just as reflective as
Hmm.
the sign.
Yeah, these are great.
This process, so this is kind of to show a little bit how I work with. Um, I think with somehow I always add if I add a nature symbol, it always opens up something. I mean, just so I did the zodiac sign, but there had to be I picked a plant to go with it. That would sort
Hmm.
of to me reflect. It's not the official. It's nowhere officially associated with the sign, but I decided that I picked one that, some are actually obvious because like Aries in the mid there is a oak, so oak tree will go with Aries, and with Virgo obviously it's going to be wheat, but some others were not necessarily obvious. Like for Taurus, I picked olive trees for various reasons, but I would always kind of read about the specific of the nature symbol and try to match it with that. But it just opens up something new that is just fresh, that has not been said before.
Okay, I love this.
This is a sketching process. So I followed actually, this was kind of a course online that for making a calendar, and she advised to do the little storyboard of all the months. And So doing that, this is how I realized that, hey, it looks like the hero's journey. I just noticed that the little progression, there's this kind of progression, the way I designed it too. Um, and so I did it both intentionally at first and unintentionally, and then more intentionally. I would sort of make sure that cancer looks like it's crushing a threshold, and um, it just I would advise, like, if you're doing this, to sort of put all your images together, because then you can sort of really see the overview of what you're trying to say, how your system is, and also how complete it is. Obviously, the zodiac is very complete by itself, but if you're doing any kind of just your own images, it just helps to see them all together.
These are so sweet, and I'm in love with Capricorn. I
Try.
love this. These are so wonderful. Okay, hold on, let me go. Okay, so let's talk about this. So these are your drawings.
Yeah. So this is sort of the concept put all together. I wanted to show both the hero's journey and the zodiac, like how I made it correspond.
Yeah, this is amazing.
So I kept, and this is like the winter, spring, fall, summer. I saw this. I don't have the book next to me, but it's called I think the Book of Birth. Is it the Book of Birthdays, or the I don't have the exact title, but it's something about the birthdays. Something every it looks through the zodiac, and it goes through every day of the year, and looks at all these characteristics. And the author came up with this really amazing diagram where they describe the year like this: winter, spring, fall, summer, with one is more subjective and then objective as the phases, and they associated the zodiac signs with the phases of life. So that kind of gave me the idea to look also into the hero's journey.
This is really interesting.
Yeah, so when you cross, so you see that those two steps, Virgo and Libra, those to me are like, when people say the hero's journey is too masculine. I say no, because Virgo and Libra are like, to me, are like the two feminine signs.
Hmm.
Even though Libra is supposedly masculine, but I find like these two sides for me are like feminine, and these are they're like um actually, here I gave them the names for they actually have the names from from Vogler's version, interestingly. But in reality, so like this is Virgo is meeting the goddess, Libra is woman as the temptress, whatever that means. It's seizing this word is more like the ordeal. I wish I'd change. I gave you
Wow,
the old drawing. Uh, but anyhow, this you can see them on the right side. I've got the
this is
actual way.
incredible. I'm loving this process so much. How creative and um, just, it's really inspiring me. I feel very excited by this. Okay, let me go to the
Well,
next
that's the
slide here.
scientist in me. When I found this, I was just very it was really exciting to me to know that the the cycle of the year, like what we go through every year is a hero's journey.
Yeah, and I just love the age associations with the different signs. It's really wonderful. So let's talk about so this is, I'm going to say, let's talk about the practicality of
Hmm.
this right now.
Yeah, so
About,
this is like the advice that I've got. It was like, try to find the the simplest color palette that you can for your drawing. You decide it over that way. All that way it's going to be, even though you have all these different designs, they're going to there's going to be consistency, because
Mhm.
you're using the same colors. And that's not what I did with the other project at all. I worked one drawing at a time and very intuitively, and opening up all of the files together and changing them all at once. This was much more strategic. Basically I decided that I'm going to use natural colors. And so I need a pale blue for the sky. I need a dark blue for nighttime and the water. I need uh two greens, for the whatever trees I'm doing. I need a gold. I need a black and a white, and I need a red, and then there was one neutral color for whatever I couldn't, you know. And the interesting thing is that that neutral color, it became like the gold and the neutral color are like they have a meaning, I think. Like whatever ended up being that color is as kind of like that means the unknown, I think, the that sort of neutral purplish color, and then the gold is like whatever is becoming conscious.
Mm. Yeah, the neutral color feels like it feels like liminal almost, like where are you don't you can't really orient so much, or there's like a, you're in a you're definitely in an in between. That's how
Yeah,
I
it's a
feel.
kind of a purplish gray.
Yeah, I love it. Okay.
So, and this is I think we skipped the painting process, but here I went through, it doesn't matter. The next
Okay.
one, you can see behind. So I basically did all of the paintings by hand, and then I would do a design process on top of it. I would scan. So there's the painting, and then I scan the painting, and then it changes a lot. You see, like between the
Yeah.
painting and the card. I decided that it was too bare. I wanted more elements. I wanted her to be more feminine, and also the roses is like it adds something. It means something more. It means like there's something uniting the opposite. There's something uniting the light and the dark, and that is the rose, which is eros, which is love.
Are you thinking about the numbers of things that you put in?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's something I wanted to say too. Like with the other one as well, is like numbers because I guess because it's math to me. It's
Hmm.
I pay a lot of attention to how many there is of each item and it means something. So she's got three stars on the top. There's the two trees below each of the roses. There's four of each. So a little bit like the tarot where the numbers mean a lot. In the
Hmm.
tarot, this is also there, but in a maybe in a different way.
Yeah. Okay.
And here when you see them all, like there is this progression. I was also trying to like say like Aries is the first sign, so like the tree behind is like a big one. And then the second one you've got number two, you've got kind of the three going with Gemini with the two. You can kind of see all of this, three, four, five. I don't know if it breaks, I think, after in the higher numbers, but there's an evolution. I realize that there's a kind of in the zodiac, there is an evolution in consciousness. Like the first few signs, or um, this is something you can read in Jung's map of the soul. That's
Hmm.
Murray Stein. There's a chapter where he talks about the stages of consciousness, I think. When he talks about at the beginning, you're like projecting on the environment. So you're like one with the environment, and then the first step is to disconnect from that. And then you project onto people, and then you project onto ideas, and then you take all that back. And then you're like, don't believe in God anymore. It's like
Yeah.
all these evolution. And then the step five, which what he would call somewhat postmodern, is when you reconnect with nature. And that's kind of, I think, where I'm at, is like you go from you're like only scientific, everything, and there's no magic in the world. And then how do you refine the magic, but in a conscious way? So
That's
that would
so,
be,
that brings us back to like how we started the conversation where I asked
yeah.
you about, yeah, that's really fun.
This is just to say like when you've got your cards, but you got to think about the whole system. So once I finished the card, I was like, okay, I've got to have some instructions. I had also painted all the planets, and I thought the person who asked me if I had these as card and gave me the idea of making my calendar into a deck, was an astrology teacher. So I thought I'm going to make these so that a little bit of astrology aid for like people learning how do you associate which planet is the ruler of each sign. It's just a little cheat sheet. I thought it'd be fun to include in the deck and
Yeah.
some keywords, the hero's journey idea, and then also like the how the planets are lined up in astrology is different than, in actual lines. This is not actually how they are, I think, but this is how, like, from the point of view of the Earth.
Okay, let's.
This is prototyping. So essentially, I use this company called Making Playing Card. I think they're in Hong Kong. And the nice thing is you can order just one deck. Other companies you can't. It's just like you gotta just order your big order. So if you want to prototype and just do one deck, this company is it's good to test with.
Nice.
And this is the company I did the print run with. And so a little bit, I just wanted to show like, you can choose your finishes and choose if you want to have little foil on the edges. And it turned out really nice.
Yeah.
So I did up, at first I was not even going to do a guidebook because I thought, well, everybody knows about astrology. There's a million things written about it.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine was like, no, I think I really miss having you there telling me what they mean. So I was like, okay. So I did a little guidebook, but as a PDF. And so that's kind of what I did. And she suggested I do a little printable version so that you can fold it, and if you just go camping or something where there's no Wi-Fi, you can have the little sheet. So I have
Yeah,
it in
I
both.
love the books. You've got to have the books. Like even when you buy your tarot decks, you have like 15 million tarot books and you've got all these decks and they all have their things, but I feel like it's really nice to have somebody's going to speak to you in a way that it's just for you in that moment. And so I really appreciate, I'm glad that you ended up doing that.
Yeah, and I just revised it. So what I did is, I mean, it's been a process to learn about these myths because there's one thing. It's like you can't, to understand a myth, you really have to live with it for some time. And each of them, and to me, like making the connection with the hero's journey was like really significant, like the way I look at it, and to really understand on emotional level the myth. I connected it with a movie, so I would look at the top 100 list of the most iconic movies, American
Hmm.
movies, and then I just like kind of intuitively picked which one I thought go with which sign. And after that, for over a couple of years, I wrote a really in-depth post for each. And it really turns out that the myths are not dead. They are in our movies, really. They just like Truman Show is the myth of Aquarius. So this just to say like the process doesn't really end afterwards. I just keep learning.
Yeah.
This is the my first project that is still ongoing, but I really want to do the book. Hopefully this year. I always say that. So, uh, yeah, but with this is like I just trying to be a little more and more free with it. I just picked little elements from each card and created this little scene.
Yeah.
So you can see that here I did not use a strict color palette. I just picked uh I wanted each card to be unique, but at the same time fit with the other ones.
Yeah. Oh, I love the curator. I love them all. Oh, so sweet.
So yeah,
You ever think about
recently
writing a children's book?
a million people have told me that. Um, I guess I will at some point.
Put that on the list.
Yeah. I'm looking now, I'd like all the names as I'm looking at archetypes, like because the way I'd find them was more like making personal association and observing. To me, I was observing what was going on in the culture. But now I'm like, okay, I'm looking at different systems of archetype. I think it's interesting. There's branding archetype, there's literary archetypes, there's different kind of systems. So anyway, that's my next step.
Yeah. Okay. So what are these?
These are just paintings that I did. I did a trip in Italy, well, before the pandemic. Um, And I don't know, it was kind of significant. It was the first time going there, and I met my twin sister there, and it was our 50th birthday. So, but I wanted to do a little, I wanted to paint a souvenir, but at the same time, whenever I do a painting, it has to mean more than what I'm seeing. So I always look for this is what like the magic kind of layer on top. I inspire from what I see in the reality, but I try to pull out something. So it tells a little story. So these are like I would call them inner cities or inner landscape. They're more
Yeah.
like a reflection of an inner state.
Is this where you grew up?
No, this is where my one of my very good friends from college grew up in Italy. That's her region.
It's beautiful.
But yeah, I did these I grew up where I grew up, the mountains are much smaller than that. But it was, it does actually, you're right that it does kind of remind me a bit of my childhood.
Yeah, that's what it has that feel to it. So you can definitely
Yeah, the
see
pine
your
trees.
experience.
Uh,
Yeah.
yes. These are I would call them like little dream rooms. But they're basically they're kind of like the same idea as the tree house. It's the portrait of a person but using symbols.
Mm,
Um yeah, so I did a couple and just other ones as a commission. So essentially so like the first two ones they didn't yeah, I just did it without I just did it for my nephews. And this other one though was a commission. So the person told me she wanted a living room, a sunken living room, and just a few elements, but the rest was left up to me. So, and this was not easy to come up with sort of like the architecture of the space. Which
yeah.
I did a couple, a few tries before landing on that. But it's means more than so I think that our world, the way we shape things, like the architecture that we live in, all has a meaning, like whether we know it or not. Like the kind of house you live in, the kind of room, how you decorate it. I think it all has meaning.
It's so interesting because I'm going to go forward again, but well, actually, I'm just going to go back to this. But it's so interesting because when I try to create spaces like what you're doing here, I don't have, first of all, I have no like mathematical skills at all. Like I wouldn't even think about like taking a ruler out or doing something like that. It's just not how I operate. And so inevitably I do a scene and when I look at it, I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, where is the floor? Why is this going at this angle? But then when I look at pieces of folk art that I have hanging in my bathroom or my kitchen, I'm like, oh, that's how their pieces are, you know? So it is, I like that you talk about the struggle with it and also just um I mean it looks perfect to me. But I do appreciate like that trying to set up a space is really challenging.
Yeah, and from scratch, like without having a model.
Yeah,
Like, because these other ones
exactly.
were easier rooms, but the sunken living room was a
Yeah, the
difficult one to
sunken living
do.
room is tough. I love the fire.
Yeah, that it just adds something. So these are my products, essentially. They're the cards. And I made these wood stickers. I have some of them here. Hold on. Uh,
I'm going to stop sharing so you can show
Okay.
so we can see it. Yeah, okay, go. Oh yeah.
But they're basically printed on wood, which I thought was really neat.
Yeah.
And
How do you, so you just send it to a certain place that
huh?
you just
Yes,
send it to
yes,
a
I had
place
them
that prints on
printed.
woods?
But see, what I love is I think that you know how symbols kind of contain the energy, like they're a way to channel psychic energy. And like since we don't really have most people don't really, well, not most people, but anyway, less people um, use religious system. We need other system, and zodiac is very popular maybe that way because it's a system that helps us to organize and channel the psychic energy. And I think if we have symbols around us that they help to they just help to hold these
Yeah, they're
energies.
containers.
Yeah.
It's really incredible. I feel so grateful for this conversation. And you have been, first of all, just so extremely generous and not only like sharing your process, but sharing just like the nuts and bolts of what it's like to create a deck. That's a very generous offering for you to share with us. And I'm going to be putting in the show notes all of the stuff, the books that you referred to, but do you want to talk about what's coming up next for you, how
Mm.
people can get in touch with you, where people can get their hands on your stuff?
Yeah. Yes. What's coming? Well, I mean, I do want to write the book for the the animal deck and definitely put it out, as soon as possible. And then for the zodiac, I was thinking I would love to add cards for the 10 planets and then for the houses as well. So that's how I would love this to grow a little bit more. I also wanted to show this book for everybody that um if you want to do a deck, this is very informative. She's asked a lot of great questions and she shares the whole process. She shares all the money aspect, all of that. So
Wow. That's wonderful. Well, I am just so happy that you joined me today. I feel so inspired and I can't wait to get my hands on your next deck that I know you're working on the writing part, but I am really excited about that. And yeah, so I'm going to put in the end of the show notes how to get in touch with Sophie, how to get a hold of her stuff that she sells, and also just all the references that she added. So thank you so much for joining
and
me today.
thank you for having me. It was really
Okay,
great talking to you.
good. Thank you.